Të nderuar zonja,
Dear ladies and gentlemen, judges of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo. In the beginning, I kindly invite you to stand for the national anthem of the Republic of Kosovo. Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ceremony marking the 14th anniversary of the establishment of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo. In 14 years of its existence, the Constitutional Court has made a continuous and invaluable contribution to the protection and strengthening the basic values of democracy, the rule of law, and basic human rights and freedoms in the Republic of Kosovo. Therefore, we are very honored and happy to mark this anniversary with you and the delegations of the respected constitutional and supreme courts from around the world. Like every anniversary of the institutions of our republic, the anniversary of the establishment of the Constitutional Court is a moment of celebration and pride. Thank you to each and any of you for joining our joy and our celebration. I have the honor and pleasure to invite now the President of the Constitutional Court, Mrs. Gresa Tsakanimani, to welcome you for with an occasional word. Good evening to everyone. Dear participants and guests of the ceremony of marking the 14th anniversary of the establishment of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo, honorable deputies, ministers, leaders of the judiciary and independent institutions, honorable Presidents Seydiu and Yahyaga, honorable ambassadors and representatives of international institutions, honorable former President of the Court, Mrs. Arta Rama Hairizi, former judges of the Constitutional Court, honorable mayors, representatives of institutions, civil society and media, dear Mr. Fabius, President of the Constitutional Court of France, honorable Presidents of the Constitutional and Supreme Courts of Belgium, Mr. Lavrisen and Nihol, Estonia, Mr. Kove, the Netherlands, Mrs. de Groot, Latvia, Mr. Levins, Albania, Mrs. Zacay, and Turkey, Mr. Zühtü Arslan. Honorable judges of the Constitutional and Supreme Courts of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Austria, Bulgaria, Ireland, Croatia, Lithuania, North Macedonia, Portugal, and the United States of America, Judge Tunheim. Honorable representatives of the European Court for Human Rights and the Venice Commission, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to begin by expressing my pleasure and deep gratitude for your presence. Your presence in marking this anniversary of the Constitutional Court honors us. The participation of delegations from all around the world reflects the respect of the world, the respect for our court, and the unwavering solidarity and commitment of the court to cooperate in the protection of the common values. Today, symbolically, we mark the 14th anniversary of the Constitutional Court, established through a constitution which has crowned the sacrifice of entire generations for freedom and independence, but also the steadfast ideal of a nation, for a state, for rule of law that reflects the values enshrined in the common tradition of democratic states. This court, a symbol of an independent constitutional order, has been vested with the task of interpreting and protecting this constitution. The simultaneous foundation of the Republic and its constitutional court has determined the role of the latter, which goes beyond the classical exercise of its constitutional jurisdiction, having an inevitable role on the shaping and consolidating of Kosovo's state and international identity. 14 years ago, the first generation of Constitutional Court judges took the responsibility to interpret a newly adopted constitution of a newly established Republican state. The context of a dynamic state-building process has enabled this court to have an essential role in determining the dynamics of democratic development of Kosovo. The court has kept the balance between the vigor of a rapid institutional building of a young state and the obligation to consolidate a social and institutional order based on the value that a new constitution enshrined. As a result, today, in the first half of its second decade, the court already has a remarkable history and a tremendously rich case law. There are two characteristics that derive from this case law, marking the unwavering role of the Constitutional Court in realizing the aspiration that the Constitution embodies for a state that stands proudly among the states of the European family. The first pertains to the Court's contribution to the protection and advancement of fundamental rights and freedoms throughout the consolidation of a state committed to the equality of all before the law. The Constitutional Court has served as a bridge between the values reflected in the case law of the European Court of Human Rights and the rights and freedoms of all the citizens and communities of the Republic of Kosovo, with no distinction, whereas the second pertains to the valuable contribution of the Constitutional Court in consolidating the principle of separation and balancing of powers in the constitutional order of the Republic of Kosovo. This because democracy is only complete when the exercise of sovereignty is supported by the rule of law, and the latter cannot exist without the necessary separation and interaction between the three independent powers. Dear participants, taken into consideration the context of the state building of Kosovo, including the challenge but also the advantage of building a new constitutional order, issues pertaining to the separation and interaction of powers have been subject to the Court's assessment continuously over the years. The Court has given its final word on a multitude of issues that involve the interaction between the branches of power, including but not limited to the procedures for the election and function of the President of the Republic, the establishment of institutions after the parliamentary elections, including the election of the government after a vote of no confidence, the oversight role of the Assembly in relation to the government and the independent institutions, limitations to the interaction between the local and central power. This decision-making by the Court on some occasions has resulted into significant changes into the political dynamics, but also the transfer and the composition of the executive and legislative branches. All the political forces have honored these decisions, thus reflecting the unwavering commitment of the republic to the state of law. Having said that, the overwhelming case law of the court in the context of separation and balancing of powers pertains to the limits of exercising the competences of the executive and legislative branches in relation to the judicial branch and constitutionally independent institutions. Taking into account the relatively recent history of the independence of the judicial branch and independent institutions, it is the latter that are exposed to a greater risk of possible infringement of their independence through the exercise of the competence of the other two branches, and this tendency is certainly not a characteristic of our republic only. According to, among others, the opinions of the Consultative Council of European Judges of the Council of Europe, during the last decades, the relationship between the three branches of government has been transformed, resulting into the reduction of the oversight function of the legislative branch over the executive one, while the increase in executive power has resulted in an increased number of disputes in the courts, and this in turn has resulted in the contestation of the legitimacy of the judicial power in the public discourse. Such a phenomenon in the democracies with a less consolidated tradition in defense of the basic values of democracy have been counterbalanced by the supranational courts, namely the European Court of Human Rights and the Court of Justice of the European Union. Whereas in the Republic of Kosovo it has been counterbalanced by the Constitutional Court. The consistent durability in defense of separation and interaction of branches of power with an emphasis on the independence of the judicial branch was maintained by the court based on the principles stemming from the Constitution, but also the case law of the two aforementioned courts. The jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights is a constitutional obligation, whereas the jurisprudence of the Court of Justice reflects with the constitutional aspiration for membership in the European Union. Dear participants, the interaction between the branches of government necessarily also reflects tension among them. Such tension, which the Consultative Council of European Judges of the Council of Europe refers to as creative tension, reflects the fact that democracy in the Republic of Kosovo functions. The absence of such tension would mean that the respective branches are not exercising the respective oversight functions effectively, thereby harming the maintenance of the proper constitutional balance. Having said that, this tension has at times also been manifested in public attacks against the Constitutional Court and other independent institutions. Such a public discourse is not unique only to our republic. Its essence, although not articulated as such, reflects the theoretical level discussion related to the counter-majoritarian difficulty agreement, which in essence entails the dilemma of the lack of legitimacy of the judicial branch and constitutional courts, whose power does not stem directly from the people, to review the laws and acts adopted by the elected representatives of the people. However, in democracies with a more consolidated constitutional tradition, this dilemma has been overcome, and the counter-argument has prevailed, according to which the legitimacy of judicial control stems from the Constitution, from loyalty to it. Certainly, the constitutional legitimacy is interdependent with the functional legitimacy of judges and prosecutors, who are subject to the constitutional duty of self-restraint, professionalism, and accountability in exercising their function in defense of the Constitution and the law. On the contrary, the holders of judicial and prosecutorial power themselves are the ones who would diminish the authority of an entire branch of power to the detriment of the necessary constitutional balance. These principles have been consistently emphasized by the Constitutional Court, including the fact that the separation and interaction of branches of government does not mean their function in isolation, but rather based on the principle of constitutional loyalty in support of each other in order to ensure the proper functioning of constitutional order in a democratic society. Ladies and gentlemen, surely the public and theoretical debate, including criticism, which is an essential value of our democratic order regarding the source of democratic legitimacy of judicial and constitutional review, is valuable. Having said that, we must also remember that the theory of the separation and interaction of independent branches is the only one that has stood the test of time and constitutes the foundation of liberal constitutional democracies. The latter, for almost 3 centuries, have remained faithful to the essence of the theory developed through the rarest minds of philosophical and political thought, including the French thinker Montesquieu through the spirit of the laws, and Alexander Hamilton and James Madison through the Federalist Papers, according to which essentially civil and political liberties are effective only through a system of separated and controlled branches designed to prevent the concentration of power or the arbitrariness of each of them. Inspired also by Montesquieu in one of the Federalist Papers back in 1788, in a simplified but magnificent way, the essential question that has challenged and shaped the constitutional designs for centuries in the context of function of the state of power, and I'm quoting it as follows. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing government which is to be administered by man over man, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and the next phase, oblige it to control itself. In the spirit of these concepts stand among the oldest democratic orders in the world. In the spirit of these principles lies the common denominator of the constitutional tradition of democratic states. On the principles of this heritage stands the Constitution of the Republic of Kosovo. It is the duty of the Constitutional Court to remain faithful to these values. The same duty belongs to all public authorities. The Constitution is not simply a written document whose interpretation is subject to the expectation for the state of law in light of the first Constitution, we, the people of Kosovo. The Court, always within the limitations stipulated by the Constitution, but without taking into account the daily dynamics and development, will remain faithful to these principles. Ladies and gentlemen, 14 years after its establishment, the Constitutional Court today stands dignified among the Constitutional Court's members of the World Conference on Constitutional Court. The Court is one of the most active members of the Venice Commission Forum. Its jurisprudence is an additional guarantee and argument that Kosovo has its place among the member states of the Council of Europe. Its achievements, despite the challenges, are a reflection of the steadfast commitment of all generations of judges of the Constitutional Court. Surely also of the endless support of sister constitutional courts from around the world, the deep cooperation with which is also reflected by their large participation in this ceremony, to which on behalf of the Court I once again express my deep gratitude. Your cooperation honors our Court. Your participation honors our Republic. Gratitude for cooperation and endless support should also be addressed to the Venice Commission and the Council of Europe. with whose support the Court has established an extraordinary cooperation with the European Court of Human Rights. I am deeply convinced that when our Republic takes its deserved place as a member of the Council of Europe, the case law of the Constitutional Court will withstand the oversight filter of the European Court of Human Rights. Last, I express gratitude to the embassies of friendly nations in the Republic of Kosovo and their agencies for international cooperation, which have continuously and generously supported our court. Special gratitude to two friend nations among many of them present today, namely the United States of America and the Republic of France, which in this ceremony are represented by two honorable speakers. Federal Judge Tanheim, who has left his mark in the state-building process of Kosovo, including through his support in the making of our constitution, and President Fabius, the extraordinary support of whose has enriched our court, including with the richness of the French constitutional tradition. Dear friends, the Republic of Kosovo has been built through stories in which the pain meets the pride and resistance. Above all, the Republic of Kosovo is a story of success, not only in terms of the historical state-building journey, but also the development of democracy. Such success is necessarily also a reflection of the support and strong partnership of friend nations of the Republic of Kosovo. Having said this, democracy is a continuous process which is subject to the test of commitment, the unwavering belief and commitment idea, a common idea that is reflected in the very preamble of the Constitution, the building of a republic that is based on the common values of peace-loving nations in the world. To return one more time to Montesquieu, there is no nation so powerful as the one that obeys its laws not from fear or reason, but from passion, from the commitment and respect for the state. Thanking you for your attention on behalf of my colleague judges of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo, Deputy President Bayram Latifi, and judges Selvete Gërgjeliu Krasniqi, Safet Hoxha, Radomir Lavan, Ramzi Strefi Peci, Nejmi Rejepi, and Enver Peci. We congratulate and celebrate together these 14 years of tradition of constitutional justice in the Republic of Kosovo. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable President of the Court. In inability to be present with us today, the President of the Republic of Kosovo, Her Excellency, Mrs. Vjosa Osmani, we will listen to her address, video address now. Dear President of the Constitutional Court, dear judges from Kosovo and different parts of the world, dear guests, although I had planned to be with you to mark the 14th judicial year of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo, due to traveling abroad, I am addressing you today via video. The Republic of Kosovo is a state fully committed to democracy, the rule of law, and the protection of the rights and freedoms of its citizens without any distinction. From the first day of its existence and every day thereafter, these are and should be the main words of the work of each institution of our country, which are entrusted with the protection and advancement of all these fundamental values intertwined in our Constitution. As the President of the country, my daily work is guided by this very Constitution, which has vested this institution with the competence and responsibility of guaranteeing the constitutional functioning of the institutions of my country. Our courts have a very important role in our system, which are expected to work in compliance with the principles of independence, impartiality, integrity, and professionalism, and contribute to increasing citizens' trust in the justice system. I would like to bring to your attention a very unique role that the Constitutional Court of Kosovo has had since its establishment, which has to do with building the necessary practice of respecting the standards of interpretation of freedoms and human rights based on the practice of the European Court of Human Rights. Our Constitutional Court has paid due attention to this important constitutional obligation, and this has clearly had a positive impact on the regular course of the judicial system, thus raising the professional level and interpretation standards. This constitutional standard, in addition to contributing to legal certainty, also serves our citizens as a guide to know and better understand their rights, freedoms, but also their responsibilities. I am happy that in the coming days, Kosovo's Constitutional Court will host discussions with courts from the most developed countries in Europe and beyond to discuss their role in strengthening the values of a democracy, rule of law, and constitutionality. I am convinced that the exchanged experiences of other countries, as well as the case law of the European Court of Human Rights, will be the right guide for Kosovo in addressing many challenges during our state building. I wish to welcome in particular Judge Tannheim from the United States of America, who was with us while we drafted our Constitution and helped us build important constitutional standards as a new democracy. I also welcome the judges from different countries of the world, hoping that the cooperation between them and the Constitutional Court will continue to deepen. In the end, I take the opportunity to congratulate the Constitutional Court again for organizing international conference at such a high level of participating personalities and institutions, thus making our country, the Republic of Kosovo, the epicenter of such an important scientific discussion on the role of the Constitutional Court. Thank you. Now it's my honor to invite for an occasion word one of our dearest guests, friends of Republic of Kosovo Constitutional Court, the federal Judge Tannheim, with whose dedication he contributed a lot to strengthen the rule of law in Kosovo for 2 decades. Judge Tannheim, the floor is yours.
Nënduar trokitje tuaja.
Thank you all. Thank you in particular, Madam President. It's wonderful to be here today. I see so many familiar faces. It's like a grand reunion. And it's fun to see so many people. It's a great honor to be asked to speak today on the occasion of the 14th judicial year of the Constitutional Court of Kosovo. I think this may be my 4th visit to a Constitutional Year celebration. A warm welcome to all of the members of the Constitutional Court and former members who are here, members of the Constitutional Commission. I've seen many of you today, and all the important international visitors that are here. Mr. Ambassador, good to see you as well. Thank you all for coming. Today, we celebrate a remarkable achievement. The Kosovo Constitution and the court that has so faithfully and courageously interpreted that document since independence in 2008. It's been one of the great privileges of my life to have been involved in the development of so much of the legal system here in Kosovo, here in the heart of Europe. My first visit was in the cold winter of 1999 and 2000, which many of you remember, when the cruel and inhumane ravages of war were apparent everywhere. Yes, I brought a sleeping bag and I used it every night. Our task was to help the United Nations restart a legal system that had been destroyed by so many institutions. Amazingly, one of the most important questions was, what law should be in effect in Kosovo? Some of you will recall our long travels throughout the territory and the resulting Quick Start program that reinvigorated Kosovo and restarted the rule of law. Supervising the first free elections in the fall of 2000 was an incredible experience, and I have returned many times over the years, drafting codes, assessing the progress of the judiciary, bringing American judges to work in the international judge system, just plain giving advice, and working on many rule of law issues too numerous to mention today. I do feel like Kosovo has become like a second home to me over these more than 50 visits I have made here. It's remarkable to see the change over this past nearly a quarter of century of progress. We began the creation of the Kosovo Constitution with hopes and dreams of a foundational document that would rival any Western democracy in its protection of human rights, in its support of the rule of law, and its creation of a modern parliamentary republic. The ultimate triumph of hope over fear. In short, the goal was to propose a modern constitution that would help to sweep away the recent history of war and ethnic violence and embody the grand ideals of the rule of law. And importantly, the goal was to prove to the world that Kosovo was ready for independence and could be a country willing to protect all of its citizens. Madam President, who was then a senior advisor at USAID, organized much of the work needed to develop a constitution. Professor Warren and Professor Aucoin, who are here today with us, were really, really important members of the team. We began by identifying the foundational requirements that are expected by the European Union, by the Venice Commission, and by the earlier Ahtisaari framework for peace arising out of the Venice talks. A wise and sensible, multi-ethnic, multi-party constitutional commission, some of whom are here today, it's great to see you, was appointed to make the most important decisions and lead the drafting efforts. Ms. Kelmendi and Mr. Cucci proved to be outstanding leaders, and this was hard work. Although the world provides many good examples, a constitution must encompass not only international agreements, but also reflect local culture and norms. History is important, and the people to be governed must accept the terms of governance. This was not an easy task, especially in the early stages when the public could not be fully consulted. A predictable impasse was reached in the summer when members of the Commission were unable to reach agreement on the important question of how to divide powers between a president and a prime minister. Someone even suggested that we needed to bring in the veteran diplomat Richard Holbrooke to mediate. But that wasn't necessary. Instead, with the help of the American Chief of Mission, Tina Kadenow, Grace and I spent an intense week negotiating a critical power-sharing agreement among the political leaders, and Mr. President, you were an important part of that week. The agreement paved the way for the commission to begin drafting the proposed constitution. A large fall conference in Mitrovica hammered out the details, and we made sure that the final wording was very precise in each of Kosovo's languages. The Constitution was essential for what came next, the very consequential Declaration of Independence on February 17th of 2008. The Assembly quickly ratified the Constitution following an emotional, celebratory signing ceremony during which the Commission members presented their recommendations to Kosovo's leaders less than 1 year after this intense process was begun. The long-held dream of independence became a reality, and a visionary constitution was in place to guide the new country. I want to salute the Kosovo Constitution for a moment because it is indeed a remarkable document that reflects constitutional ideals that are recognized throughout the world. It fully incorporates the provisions of 8 international covenants on human rights and grants very significant protections and self-government rights to Kosovo's non-majority populations. Concepts of federalism, the division of power between the central and regional government, are present here, which is an important value. The constitutional protections against discriminatory treatment are extensive, and equality is guaranteed for all. These protections are to be interpreted consistent with the decisions of the European Court on Human Rights, and human rights, one of the most important values that countries must enshrine in their constitutions or foundational documents. And Kosovo's guarantees of equality are as strong as any in the world. Among its many articles addressing human rights and human dignity, the Kosovo Constitution grants a right to free education, a strong right of privacy, religious, academic, and media freedom, and a right to work. The document also includes significant and specific provisions protecting against torture or degrading treatment. A unique and particularly visionary provision requires governmental entities to consider the environmental impact of all decisions, more important today with climate change upon us. Equally important in the grand pantheon of our shared constitutional values is the rule of law. And one of the most important tasks of a constitutional court is to protect the rule of law. The Kosovo Constitutional Court is fully empowered to interpret the Constitution and to be assured that its decisions are binding on the government and on the judiciary and on all persons and institutions in Kosovo. I fully admit to drafting the final version of Article 116 because I wanted to make clear that Constitutional Court decisions are final, and further that the principles articulated in constitutional decisions are precedents for future decisions. Of this there should be no doubt, and the Commission, to its great credit, readily agreed. And alongside the court, the very independent judiciary was established to enforce the laws of the country. An independent judiciary is the very foundation of the rule of law, both structural and decisional independence. Without an independent judiciary, the promises of the rule of law cannot be kept. And thanks to the Constitution, Kosovo has a modern European-style parliamentary democracy with provisions that seek to avoid lengthy impasses. Part of the genius of constitution writing is anticipating potential problems that stand in the way of good governance. We are seeing such problems in the current standoff in our country over who will be the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. One cannot fully anticipate all future issues, that is true, but I think the Kosovo Constitution comes close. And speaking of democracy, the right to vote is broad and all-encompassing, allowing the full participation of citizens in the decision-making process through free and fair elections. Built into this Constitution are more American-style concepts of separation of powers and checks and balances. These provisions give each branch of the government the ability to limit the powers of other branches, ensuring accountability and empowering minority populations. Executive powers are divided between the President and the Prime Minister. The principle of control of military and police by civilian authorities cannot be suspended, and emergency powers are divided. These are classic ideals that prevent the concentration of power that often have been and continue to be devastating for the world. Yes, the Kosovo Constitution is a remarkable document, as visionary today as when it was ratified in 2008. But keeping a democracy vibrant and alive is hard work, much harder than drafting a constitution. Vigilance is required every single day, and there are no exceptions. One of America's founders, Benjamin Franklin, on exiting the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, was asked what sort of government the delegates had created. His answer, "A republic, sir, if you can keep it." That, in a word, my friends, is the great challenge of a democracy and the rule of law, keeping it. The Kosovo Constitutional Court, in my view, has done outstanding work in its 14 years. Being the original interpreters of a constitution operating without precedents is not easy. Despite frequent changes in composition and unfortunate delays in appointing new members, the court has been a faithful and, I would say, courageous interpreter of the words of the Constitution, a bright beacon for the path ahead, and truly a builder of public respect for the rule of law, essential to keeping it. The court's work through the leadership of its presidents, Enver Hassani, Arta Rama, and now President Saka Nimani, have been inspired and has helped to set Kosovo's path to a solid and secure future. The court has surely helped to keep this republic, in the words of Mr. Franklin. And the rule of law, as it should, has led to prosperity and economic growth. One needs only to look around to see that incredible growth and economic prosperity. It's been my privilege to work with the court in its adoption and revisions of its rules of procedure, and in the process to watch the work of the court up close, resolving many difficult issues faced by this still very new country. We celebrate today the exceptional work of this court, just as we celebrate the visionary document that for Kosovo is the written embodiment of the rule of law. We celebrate, too, the work of the Commission that guided the drafting of the Constitution and played a very important role for this country. You know, I often carry with me this pocket-sized Constitution. You know, it reminds me of what is good in this world and what is needed to combat evil in so many places. And it is my hope that in the years to come, when the history is written of the beginnings of this republic in the heart of Europe, that this Constitution and this court are widely regarded as the firm foundation that has made Kosovo a remarkable success story. Kosovo has come a long way since that cold and often desperate winter of 1999. A big reason for this remarkable progress has been the rule of law and the commitment of human rights for all. The promises that are enshrined in the Constitution and enabled by the dedication of the Constitutional Court. Together, they are the soul of Kosovo. There is much more work to do, but the path ahead is bright and clear. A republic, sir, if you can keep it. Let's keep it. Thank you very much.
Nderuar gjyqtar Tanheim, faleminderit. Tani kam nderin që për fjalën kryes.
Now I have the honor to invite Mr. Laurent Fabius, President of the French Constitutional Council, a statesman with a long experience who has served as a Prime Minister, Speaker of Parliament of France, and also a member of European Parliament. Mr. Fabius, your presence today honors the Constitutional Court and Republic of Kosovo. I kindly invite you to take the floor.
Madame la Présidente de la Cour constitutionnelle, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres de la Cour constitutionnelle, Madame la Ministre de la Justice, Messieurs les ministres, Madame l'ancienne Présidente de la République, Monsieur l'ancien Président de la République, Mesdames et Messieurs les hautes personnalités, Mesdames et Messieurs, chers collègues juges, d'abord je voudrais vous remercier chaleureusement d'avoir eu l'heureuse idée de m'inviter au
Gjyqësoni e this.
la 14e année judiciaire de la Cour et les 15 ans de votre Constitution. En me proposant d'y prendre la parole dans cette cérémonie d'ouverture,
By allowing me to speak at the opening ceremony, I feel that you are sending a sign of friendship not only to the French Constitutional Council, which I'm heading, but also to the institution of my country, and perhaps I might say to France. In this case, I see the echo of the brotherhood between France and Kosovo, which has appeared in many ways since 1999. Including in the field of justice and the building of the rule of law. As all of you present here, I appreciate the progress made, the achievements in terms of the rule of law in a short time. You will find us by your side to face the difficulties that still remain to be solved, because, as we all know, many difficulties remain to be resolved. The current period is dangerous. This word should be used without false shyness. Law and the rule of law must prevail. Even my country, throughout its history, has gone through periods of danger. Our current constitutions stems from one of them, one of these periods. Precisely regarding the French expertise, I will not have enough time to describe here fully the journey of the Constitutional Council since its creation 65 years ago. However, I want to emphasize that this significant path has been marked by decisions that have shaped our jurisprudence with force but also in search of balance. One of the main signs in the affirmation of the Constitutional Council as a true constitutional court is the decision known to specialists dated 16th of July 1971, known as freedom of association, whereby the Council emphasized that it is up to it to check the compatibility of laws with all the elements that appear in the catalogue of fundamental rights to which the French Constitution refers, namely not only the wording itself of the Constitution, but also the famous Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizens of 1789, the preamble of the Constitution of 1946, and the Charter for the Environment of 2004. The control of the compatibility of laws with our constitutional rules has been established continuously, especially since the creation by the Constituent itself in 2008 of the parity issue of constitutionality, which I like to call the citizen issue. This case constitutes a democratic progress as it enables any litigant in a trial to refer the case to the Constitutional Council through the filter of higher instances of civil and criminal justice or administrative justice to assess the compatibility of any law regardless of the date of its adoption with the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. It is a great success because the affirmation of the Constitutional Council is the Constitutional Court, because we have 1,000 such cases we have reviewed so far. The affirmation of the Constitutional Council as a Constitutional Court can be understood through the case law and also the big decisions we rendered by checking the laws submitted before it. The Constitutional Council ensured respect for various principles: equality, secularism, freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, the right to strike, the right to property, respect for private life, the inviolability of the home, the right to have a normal family life, the presumption of innocence, and finally, fraternity, the protection of the environment and future generations. In our control of the compatibility of the law with the constitutional requirements, we always take into account the fact that the constituent can advance the structure of these requirements, but we also know that its intervention must be conceived in accordance with the rules provided in the Constitution. Let me summarize by saying that the rule of law can be advanced, should be always advanced, and should be as such. And the same applies to the way the Constitutional Council envisages the articulation between national law and European Union law. From this point of view, our control contributes to increasing the protection of the rule of law that reflects not competition but complementarity between constitutional offices in accordance with the terms of the European Union Treaty. Let me add that the Constitutional Council, although it does not assess the compatibility of the national law with the European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights, nevertheless focuses on the dialogue with the European Court of Human Rights, especially in the form of the dialogue of our case laws with a common perspective of protecting the rule of law. Why have I discussed these main axes so far practiced in France? I would like to underline the convergences between the rights and freedoms protected by the constitutions of our respective countries and many of those present in this ceremony. The Constitution of Kosovo, to which you guarantee respect in letter and spirit, has benefited from the positive and negative experiences of other countries. Its drafters had to take into account the circumstances that led from the war of 1999 to the independence of 2008. In particular, in terms of the values on which it rests, the Constitution of Kosovo is particularly modern. I am particularly surprised by the inclusion in the Constitution of international texts to which the Republic of Kosovo is not yet a party. Thus, the Constitution of Kosovo contains in its Article 22 the important texts of the United Nations, in particular Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the European Convention on Human Rights, as well as its protocols. It gives these texts a higher value than the law in the hierarchy of standards and recognizes their direct applicability. The Assembly of Kosovo has also wished to support normative progress by giving the same value to international texts approved after 2008. In this provision, which enables the implementation of a text to which Kosovo cannot yet be subject to, I see the commendable ambition to offer your citizens the best protection of rights. I also see the legitimate aspiration to be able to join these international instruments. France supports this desire. At the same time, for many years, France has been actively working towards the normalization of relations with Serbia, which, despite the difficulties, is the path that the Republic of Kosovo must follow in order to find its rightful place in the international community. France has signed all these texts. In fact, it has often inspired them. We share the foundation they form. It unites us in a democratic and humanistic project. I would like to point out, in particular, a common point between our values that create the rights and freedoms guaranteed by our respective constitutions, secularism, and the neutrality of the state in matters of religious belief. This principle of secularism is stated in the first paragraph of the first article of our Constitution. It states that France shall be an indivisible, secular, democratic and social republic. It shall ensure the equality of all citizens before the law without distinction of origin, race or religion. It shall respect all beliefs. End of quotation. In fact, this principle of secularism is old. The separation dates back to 1905. The Constitutional Council, by a decision dated 21st of February 2013, made the principle of secularism one of the rights guaranteed by the Constitution in terms of Article 61, Paragraph 1 of the Constitution. This decision has practical significance. The components of secularism, namely the respect of all beliefs, the equality of all citizens, regardless of religion, and the guarantee of worship, are now all rights that can be initiated by litigants. Secularism is no longer just a principle for organizing relations of cults with public authorities. It has now become the source or foundation of individual rights. We can undoubtedly have a fruitful dialogue on this topic and its implementation issues that may arise. Another issue we can discuss, because we are moving in the same direction, is the sensitive topic, because we are moving towards the same direction, which is the right to marriage of same-sex couples. When it was adopted, the Constitution of Kosovo was on this subject a step forward compared to the provisions that existed in France at the same time. By recognizing the right to marry without limiting it to couples of different sexes, Kosovo has set an important historical momentum on a path that we had already passed. Likewise, in 1999, we established the right for same-sex couples to enter into a civil partnership recognized by law. If I may say so, We have put you on this path of equality and dignity by passing a law in 2013 that gives everyone the right to marry. These two laws, the one of 1999 and the one of 2013, were not easily approved. We had debates, several times severe, harsh ones, and the matter went to the Constitutional Council. It ruled that the election of the legislator was not contrary to any constitutional principle. I present this topic carefully because I know that your parliament will present a text reform of the civil code. This may include provision of marriage. I am not familiar with the minute details. However, such formulation may include provisions of marriage, and it will be up to the Constitutional Court to assess the compatibility of this future law with the Constitution. Therefore, it was my intention to exchange with you our experience on this topic, because after this harsh debate, at times a very furious debate, now I can freely say that adoption of this law has created some servility, because I now think that in France everybody has understood that this law in fact has brought justice to certain people without depriving them of any justice, any rights. Madam President, every a society in which the observance of the law is not assured, not the separation of powers defined, has no constitution at all. This was said clearly and strongly in the Declaration of Human and Citizens' Rights on 26th of August, 1789. Let me mention one of these aspects before I conclude, that of the independence of justice. The organization of justice in the institution of the Republic of Kosovo makes your court equivalent to our three French institutions: the Constitutional Council, the Council of State, the Supreme Body of Justice, and the Court of Cassation. I understand the workload and especially the weight of the responsibilities that are yours. Beyond the organizational specifics of each country, the independence of justice is at the center of the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights, which devotes the greatest vigilance to the statutory and functional protection of the judiciary in the face of the risk of interference from the executive power. I'm very familiar with this topic since I was also part of such power. Formal guarantees and the smooth running of the procedures for the appointment of judges and prosecutors are at the center of the rule of law, and therefore the proper function of the institutions, the careful selection of judges, and the timely appointment of authorities responsible for the proper functioning of justice deserve constant attention. The European institution, the Venice Commission, to which I paid tribute, and more generally the institution of the Council of Europe, which Kosovo wants to join, can help you. They are here to help you. Separation of power is obviously essential that you have insisted on. It is based in particular on the respect of res judicata. It is primarily the executive responsibility to ensure that these decisions of the courts are effectively implemented, be they first instance decisions or, of course, decisions of the Constitutional Court. It is a constitutive principle of the rule of law. It is also the guarantee of legal certainty without which no economy can develop sustainably, no society can truly flourish, and no democracy can earn its name. Respecting res judicata also means ensuring the effectiveness of guarantees and protections provided by constitutional or legislative texts. Kosovo guarantees in text a higher degree of protection of minority of all communities and their members, to whom a whole chapter of your constitution is dedicated. This protection must be seen and felt every day by the members of the minority communities living here. The Kosovo, which the international community, at least most of its members, wanted to see independent, is a multi-ethnic Kosovo. Keeping this balance alive and functioning is key to the success of this project, and your court plays and will play a significant role. I am fully aware that as the ultimate interpreter of the Constitution, you can sometimes feel alone at times in the face of expectations, critique, and even pressure from others. The situation of judges is rarely safe. Having largely responded to your invitation to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Constitution, all of us, presidents and members of other constitutional courts, wanted to show you our solidarity. The conference program after this solemn ceremony will be an opportunity to exchange on topics that concern us all. We will talk about the strengthening of democracy and the rule of law through constitutional control, about interactions with supranational courts, and control of the constitutionality of acts. I think that these presentations will highlight now, though sometimes different solutions, we are working in the same direction. Many international instances 15 years ago encouraged the new Republic of Kosovo. Now, Madam President, dear colleagues, you have earned your place and respect shared by our community of our mutual court. You participate in building shared understanding and interpretation, not only by fully integrating relevant case law from other courts, but also by making your own case law easily accessible. I especially appreciate the fact that you do it in French on your website, and I'm convinced that your court has its place within the Association of Francophone Constitutional Courts. At the end of this speech, I want to recall that the Constitution is something that holds us together, keeps us together. In the end, I want to recall, obviously like you, the community of values for which we act and which we protect. I recall our common demand for independence, impartiality, and respect for the law. I recall the necessary dialogue between national and supranational judges, in particular to match the evolution of constitutional requirements and respect for the rules. Finally, I remember the solidarity and brotherhood of the constitutional courts. Therefore, I believe that I can act as a spokesperson, Madam President, for all the courts present here, expressing our gratitude for joining us here and congratulating you on the job already done. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Fabius. Now I kindly ask you to follow a short documentary which briefly will cover all this Odyssey journey of the Constitutional Court.
Deklaratën e pavarësisë dhe shpalli Kosovën shtet sovran dhe të pavarur. Në 9 prill 2008 u miratua Kushtetuta e Republikës së Kosovës, e cila hyri në fuqi më 15 qershor të njëjtit vit.
Kushtetuta e Kosovës është simbol i lirisë dhe pavarësisë së popullit Kosovës. Një dokument modern që ngërthen parimet më të avancuara ndërkombëtare në kontekst të shtetit të së drejtës e vlerave të demokracisë. Ajo reflekton për kushtimin e popullit Kosovës për të qenë antar i denj i familjes së shteteve paqëdashëse në botë.
Kjo kushtetut themeloi gjykatën kushtetuese si institucion plotësisht të pavarur dhe autoritet përfundimtar në Republikën e Kosovës për interpretimin e kushtetutës dhe përputhshmërisë së ligjeve me kushtetutën. Gjykata kushtetuese, përkundër faktit që është gjykata më e re kushtetuese në kontinentin evropian, në 14 vite të funksionimit të saj, ka ndërtuar një praktikë të jashtëzakonshme gjyqësore.
Ndër kontributet me vlerë të veçantë të gjykatës kushtetuese nga themelimi është praktika e saj gjyqësore në kontekst të parimeve të ndarjes dhe balansimit të pushteteve, me theks në ruajtjen e pavarësisë së pushtetit gjyqësor dhe institucioneve të pavarura kushtetuese. Përmes praktikës së saj, gjykata ka konsoliduar rëndësinë e parimit të pavarësisë së pushtetit gjyqësor.
Praktika e saj gjyqësore është edhe më e pasur në kontekst të drejtave dhe lirive themelore. Përmes vendimarrjes së saj, gjykata ka konsoliduar edhe parimet që burojnë nga Konventa Evropiane për të drejtat e njeriut dhe praktika e gjykatës evropiane për të drejtat e njeriut.
Janë 10 instrumente ndërkombëtare që në mënyrë të drejtë janë të zbatueshme në rendin juridik të Republikës së Kosovës dhe në rast konflikti kanë përsi mbi ligjet e aplikueshme të vendit. Por më tepër, Kushtetuta e Kosovës përcakton që të drejtat dhe liritë themelore të individit interpretohen në harmoni me praktikën gjyqësore të Gjykatës Evropiane për të drejtat e njeriut. Parimet e kësaj të fundit janë thellë të mëshiruara në praktikën gjyqësore të gjykatës sonë.
Në kontekstin e interpretimit të një kushtetute të re dhe me përgjegjësinë e vënies dhe forcimit të parimeve të drejtësisë kushtetuese në Republikën e Kosovës, gjykata përgjatë viteve ka trajtuar çështje të cilat kanë formësuar vlerat e demokracisë dhe sundimit të ligjit në vend, përfshirë parimet themelore të ndarjes dhe balancimit të pushteteve.
Gjykata kushtetuese përmes vendimarrjes së saj ka konsoliduar parimin e barazisë gjinore dhe ka trajtuar edhe çështjet që ndërlidhen me të drejtën e jetë. Ajo ka vënë në pa në mënyrë të vazhdueshme parimet dhe detyrimet që burojnë nga praktika gjyqësore e Gjykatës Evropiane për të drejtat e njeriut dhe rishtazi edhe të Konventës së Stambollit.
Me vendimarrjen dhe praktikën e saj gjyqësore, gjykata kushtetuese ka luajtur një rol të jashtëzakonshëm edhe në konsolidimin e të drejtave të komuniteteve jo shumicë në Republikën e Kosovës.
Ustavni sud je svih ovih godina služio kao čuvar i zaštitnik osnovnih prava i sloboda svih nevećinskih zajednica u Republici Kosovo. Ako sagledamo period njegovog funkcionisanja, pripadnici nevećinskih zajednica čine oko 10% stranaka koje su podnele zahtev za ocjenu ustavnosti u Ustavnom sudu, što odražava poverenje nevećinskih zajednica u rad i odlučivanje Ustavnog suda.
Tradita tashmë e konsoliduar e gjykatës kushtetuese për një vendimarrje profesionale është gjithashtu rezultati i garancive kushtetuese për pavarësinë e saj, përbërjes së gjykatës ndër vite, përfshirë përbërjen hibride të saj përgjatë dekadës së parë të funksionimit me gjyqtar vendor dhe ndërkombëtar. Aktualisht, gjykata përbët nga 8 gjyqtar, duke përfshirë 2 gjyqtar që përfaqësojnë komunitetet jo shumicë në Republikën e Kosovës dhe përgjatë shumicës së kohës, gjykata është udhëhequr nga gratë. Që nga themelimi i saj, gjykata kushtetuese ka trajtuar rreth 2400 raste. Vendimet e gjykatës merren me shumicë votash të gjyqtarëve, puna e të cilëve mbështetet edhe nga anëtarët e njësisë ligjore dhe sekretaria e gjykatës, që sigurojnë funksionimin profesional dhe efikas të gjykatës.
Ustavni sud izuzetno puno ulaže u regrutovanje stručnih kadrova i podizanje njihovog kapaciteta. Većina njih se obrazovala na prestižnim univerzitetima širom sveta. Ovi kadrovi služe sudu svojim predanim, profesionalnim i etičkim delovanjem.
Të gjitha vendimet e gjykatës kushtetuese përgatiten dhe përkthehen në gjuhën shqipe, serbe dhe angleze, e në varësi të palëve edhe në gjuhën turke, si dhe rishtazi në gjuhën frënge. Si një institucion transparent dhe llogaridhënës, gjykata publikon raporte lidhur me vendimarrjen dhe aktivitetet e saj në baza mujore, 3 mujore dhe vjetore.
Gjykata kushtetuese i kushton rëndësi të jashtëzakonshme dialogut në gjykatat e rregullta në Republikën e Kosovës dhe veçanërisht ndërtimit të mekanizmeve bashkëpunues me Gjykatën Supreme. Ky dialog ka për qëllim konsolidimin e praktikës gjyqësore dhe ndërtimin e një sistemi efektiv për mbrojtjen e të drejtave dhe lirive themelore në Republikën e Kosovës.
Duhet të theksohet që Gjykata Kushtetuese e Republikës së Kosovës ndër vite i ka kushtuar rëndësi të veçantë bashkëpunimit ndërkombëtar. Ajo ka marrëdhënie të mira dhe bashkëpunon ngushtë me gjykatat si motra në rajon e Mëgjer. Nga shtatori i vitit 2014, gjykata është anëtare aktive e forumit të Komisionit të Venecias dhe anëtare në të drejta të plota e Konferencës Botërore të Drejtësisë Kushtetuese. Për më tepër dhe përkundër faktit që Republika e Kosovës nuk është anëtare e Këshillit të Evropës dhe rrjedhimisht vendimarrja e gjykatës kushtetuese nuk i nshtrohet ende mbi këqyrjes së gjykatës evropiane për të drejtat e njeriut, bazuar në garancitë kushtetuese, ajo mbetet e përkushtuar në respektimin dhe zbatimin e parimeve që burojnë nga praktika gjyqësore e kësaj gjykate.
Gjykata kushtetuese ka një sistem jashtëzakonisht të konsoliduar për të siguruar cilëtetin e vendimarrjes së saj. Në rastet kur praktika gjyqësore e gjykatës është më pak e konsoliduar, analizohen standardet dhe parimet relevante ndërkombëtare, përfshirë ato që burojnë nga opinionet e Komisionit të Venecias, praktika gjyqësore e gjykatës evropiane për të drejtat e njerëzit, si dhe praktika gjyqësore e gjykatave tjera kushtetuese.
Shënimi i çdo përvjetori është një herësh edhe moment reflektimi. 14 vite të funksionimit të gjykatës kushtetuese reflektojnë një rrëfim suksesi. Të arriturat në kontekst të shtetëndërtimit të Republikës Kosovës që nga shpallja e pavarësisë së saj, janë pashmangshmërisht të ndërlidhura me rolin dhe kontributin e gjykatës kushtetuese. Që nga themelimi, gjykata përmes vendimarrjes së saj ka luajtur një rol të pazëvendësueshëm në përforcimin dhe konsolidimin e parimeve të demokracisë të sundimit të ligjit dhe në mbrojtjen e avancimin e të drejtave dhe lirive themelore, bazuar në vlerat që ngërthen kushtetuta e që njëherësh reflekton edhe standardet më të mira ndërkombëtare. Natyrshëm, si çdo gjykatë e re në fazën e hershme të ndërtimit të traditës së drejtësisë kushtetuese në një shtet të ri, ajo përballet edhe me sfida të kohëpaskoshme. Thënë këtë, ajo është thellë e përkushtuar që të ngadnjej mbi çdo sfidë dhe të shërbejë me përkushtim e fisnikëri, mbrojtjes së kushtetutës dhe lartësimit të vlerave të saj. Kështu nderojmë Republikën tonë. Urime 14 vjetori i themelimit të gjykatës kushtetuese.
Dear President, dear friends and guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President of the Court, Vice President and judges of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo, we are deeply grateful that you joined our celebration. Now we invite you to take part on an occasional cocktail. Thank you.